Time, weather, and
Always 13 ZBN.
the various.
96 ZFB.
This is Radio VSB at 1450 at the top of the dial.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to another edition of AirWaves, the program that looks at broadcasting over the last 70 years in Bermuda. And wait a minute. I think I hear some thunder outside. Oh well, maybe. But I know for sure we've got thunder in the studio. None other than Shelley Thunder. Welcome to, look at her, she's blushing. Welcome to AirWaves. Yeah, Shelly Johnson.
I'll tell you the story of how
Shelly
that name came about.
let's sort that out first.
Okay, well.
Wait, 1 second. Was that always?
No.
Oh, that's okay.
No.
Because I knew you as Shelly J.
Shelley J. When I
Okay.
started at Bermuda Broadcasting in
Right.
1980.
1980.
Yeah,
Okay.
and but then when I went to DeFunds in 2010, there was Sherry J doing her
Sherry
thing
J, yeah.
on Hot and stuff. So Shelly J, just too close. So
I remember
the
that,
captain
yeah.
decided, because the captain and I found ourselves emceeing and being engineers, or I was an engineer at a lot of reggae shows.
Right,
He would be the host, and I would be working. So he said, "Why don't you just be Shelly Thunder?" Because there was a reggae singer back in the day named
was?
Shelly Thunder.
Shelly Thunder.
She had
Okay.
one hit.
And then she went to work at
Then she became a
Walmart,
gospel
right?
singer.
Oh, she did.
But
okay.
but yeah, so it just stuck from there. I needed something to not be confused between the
Right.
stations and who was where. So yeah, the funnier part of that story is that my good friend Sherry, her name is
Yes.
Sherry Lynn Johnston.
Yeah,
That's her maiden
yes,
name.
that's right.
And my name is Shelly Lynn Johnson. Like how?
I
like
remember
however,
that.
you know.
Because I think
so,
we were all working at Bermuda Broadcasting around the same time. I think it
yeah,
would
could have
like
been. Could have been. I worked there twice.
88, something like that.
Yeah, in early 80s, I worked there for a couple years,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went back there when Jane Young became program director in
Okay.
radio.
So let's go back. You went to school where? Well, high school.
I right across the street, went to Northlands.
Oh, Northlands, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Class
so
of
you-
1980.
1980, 1 year behind me.
Yeah.
Class of 79. And so you left school, and then
Mm-hmm.
tell us a story about broadcasting.
Well, you sitting across from me now have a very famous father in broadcasting, as
Yes,
most people
yes,
know,
yes.
who is also a very good artist, as most people know you are too. And he came to my, not senior year, junior year, at high school, right before senior year, we were doing an art O-level,
Okay.
sort of a mock, to
Right,
be ready
right.
for the
Yeah,
following
yeah,
year
yeah,
when we were
yes.
seniors. And I liked art, and I sort of was in the 4 or 5 kids that were picked to sit it. And so your dad came up and talked to us about portraiture, which of course was a specialty
yes,
of his.
yes.
I think I still have the one he drew of me.
Oh, you
Because he
mentioned
drew a
that.
picture of all of us. And
Right.
so cut to the chase, I was always the one in school who had to do the presenting of projects or read the speech or welcome the guest or thank the guest
You
or
got drafted.
whatever went on. Being a confident reader and being
Right.
able to speak well is really what got me my job in broadcasting. So when your dad came up to do his art with us, I was like, hey, and he was the anchor on TV at the time
Yeah.
as well, doing the evening news. I was like, I could do that. I could read the news. And that was initially my first thought, because here I was a year away from graduating, no clue, like most kids, about what they want to do career-wise or where they want to continue their education.
But I can just listen to your voice right now. I hear the passion.
Yes,
I can hear that, and passion tends to be stronger than
it was an aha moment
vocation
for me.
and stuff like that.
It was an
yeah.
aha moment for me, and I really have stayed either in the field or connected to it ever since. I've never done anything else as career-wise, and I've always made a living doing what I really like to do. So I
always tell people
Grace, that way.
if you get bitten by this bug, it's probably difficult to do now. Broadcasting's changed so much, but if you get bitten by whatever bug it is, but once you get it,
Sure.
You know, I mean, we've all had our moments, and that was yours. So
Yeah.
he came there for art.
Yes.
But then gave you like a
Yeah.
inspiration for.
The penny dropped, and I said, yeah. And I think I've never never lacked confidence for asking what I want in life. I don't know where that lesson came from.
Right.
It's kind of a bit of a Johnson trait. Yeah, you ask for what you want. Someone says no, you ask someone else. You know, it's sort of like that
Yeah.
sort of stoicism.
I've heard that story so many times during
Yeah.
these interviews.
Yeah.
Because like even David Lipp said he knocked on the door, knocked on ZBM. Then finally they said, look,
Yeah.
you know, anyway.
Well, I went to your dad after we had our art lessons with him, and I said, I think I might like to be a newsreader. I had no idea about journalism per se, but just that I could speak and read well.
Like a presenter.
Yes.
Okay.
And it went from there. He invited me up. He let me read some old news scripts, showed me how to record things, and not long after I graduated, they said yes, and I came in to work on ZBM1.
ZBM1.
The easy listening station.
What?
Yeah.
Now, what was it called? Let me see the call letters. What were the call letters?
ZBM1 was
ZBM1.
12:30 radio.
12:30.
Yeah, AM.
AM
Yeah,
12:30.
yeah, AM 12:30, and then the other station was 1340.
Yeah, that was the
Right.
first station.
Yeah.
At 12. Well, it used to be 12:40. Then it
Yeah.
became 12:30. And then 1340 came in
Sure.
52.
Yeah,
So they sort of, yeah.
they were the flagship ones of
Yeah.
broadcasting.
So you went to what shift? Okay, I'll ask you this. Do you remember your first time in front of the microphone? Like the first, like where you sat there, and were you nervous? Were you?
Well, thankfully, I had Mike Bishop to teach me, and Mike was only like a year older than me too, so we could relate well.
Right, yeah.
And he sort of had the same background where it was his ability to read well and speak well that got him the job. So starting out on ZBM1, it was very structured, you know, so you had things like introductions and extras to read, things, and as long as I was reading it, I was fine, because you're reading a script, so to speak. So I wasn't per se afraid or anxious, because I knew that I could read what was in front of me. And we had to read our own newscasts at times, and commercials and everything as well.
The big book.
Yeah, the big logbook in front of you, absolutely. That's funny
My
now.
dad tells me a story. They had it was an ad book.
Sure,
at
yeah,
ZFB.
one with commercials
so some
in it.
people paid to have produced commercials.
Sure.
Others just had the book.
Sure.
And he said he remembers looking through the glass, and the guy was reading the book, and he says, and come to Gibbons Company. And he turned, and this book was about that thick, and the book literally just fell off.
Yes.
Fell right on the turntable.
Oh my goodness.
While he was reading.
That's a little bit of a hazard there. But yeah, all of that we did ourselves. So
That's great.
I can say I was probably a little anxious, you know, and I was way out of my depth. We had to do things like an evening concert hour.
Yeah.
But there was enough, and with Mike's help, of course, and then also Gerald Daniels was
yes.
part of it, and Shirley Dill.
I spoke to Mike. You know, we
Yeah.
had him on the show, and he mentioned Gerald Daniels, Shirley Dill.
Sure, yeah.
And he also mentioned Leighton Rochester as well.
Sure, Leighton was
There's so
newsreader
many
at the
people.
time.
Yeah. Did you actually have to play music on 12:30?
Yeah, we had to do the programming, and again, Mike was a huge help with that, because we had a huge record library at ZBM.
Yeah.
And everything was just managed really well. Things were color-coded and alphabetical. So you literally came in half an hour before your shift. You pulled the music you thought you'd like to play. So, you know, I knew who a lot of musicians were. Of course, we all know who the...
But then it must have been interesting, because a lot of the music was aimed at maybe an older audience.
Absolutely was aimed
so
at
you
an older
learned,
audience.
I guess you learned Perry Como.
Sure, Perry Como, Burt Bacharach, you know... Frank Sinatra, Perry Como, you know, all of those guys, Mel Torme, Tony Bennett, and all of those
Great
things.
music, you know.
Great music, who are you kidding?
That
And a
was
lot
some
of
real
great...
good stuff.
You know, Percy Faith and his orchestra had wonderful sort of contemporary songs
Yeah.
done
I had his
in an orchestral manner, you know.
Yeah, he had a Christmas album that was out that was absolutely fantastic.
Sure,
But
yeah. So it's a quick learning curve, but because I had a real interest in the music as well, it sort of went from there. And not too long after that, I ended up getting a shift on 1340.
that must have been a shift, because then you were...
On the popular station,
Yeah.
or top 40 station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you worked under Everest, or?
I did. I worked under Everest, and Joe Carvalho was...
Joe Carvalho, yeah.
He was the night flight DJ at the time. That's what it was called. And then I did it for a while. And I think that's where the captain became involved at Bermuda Broadcasting as well. He was the captain on the night flight
Yeah,
when he
it's-
started, and before
yeah.
he became Power 95's
It's
program director.
amazing the people that
Yeah.
actually passed through.
Yeah,
You know, and there's like this overlap of people.
for sure.
Like for example,
And you leave, and you always come back.
Right.
And you leave, and
Well,
you
when
come
you
back.
were there, like who do you remember anybody from, like, say, the old guard, like from in radio when you were?
Well, apart from the ones we've already
Like Shirley,
mentioned.
yeah, but were there anybody else,
I
or?
remember when North Shore came up the hill. I mean, of course, Lee Harvey was brilliant. Wayne L. I did know Marlene,
Right.
and I knew who Auntie Nell was and stuff like that. I didn't know them all personally, but I knew of them.
Right.
You know, and of course, you know, the camaraderie and the stories about, you know, the management of the company and who was involved. Of course, I think Quentin Edness was the
Yeah. Well,
was
you,
the CEO when I first started there. Yeah.
you would be of the, I would say, the vintage, or it's
Sure.
really good.
Sure.
Of when we, like, turned the television on, we had to wait
Sure.
for it to warm up, right?
A little bit.
But I remember, one of my memories, and I don't know if you remember. You remember Junior Club?
I just hearing about it.
Okay.
I never watched it. I remember hearing about it though.
Yeah, it was. I was really young. I think it went off the air in 1970.
Yeah.
But they had, like, it was like an after school
Sure.
live program that
Okay.
Nell Bassett and I think Shirley Deal subbed. But I remember just sitting there one time. I was sick. I was sitting there like just watching.
Yeah, and watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, my family, I didn't grow up here when I was like of that age to be watching those shows.
Okay, you too, right?
Yeah,
okay.
so I missed from like 1965 through to almost 70
Okay.
here on the island.
Okay.
Because our family moved to the Bahamas,
The Bahamas.
and then to England. So.
That's right. The thing is, because the Bahamas didn't get television until 77.
Yeah,
Yeah, they didn't. They were basically watching Florida TV.
sure.
At the
Yeah,
time.
I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
remember
yeah.
having a big wooden console TV, black and white. There
Oh,
might have been
yes.
3 channels or
Click,
something
click,
like
click.
that. Yep. Watching Simba the White Lion,
Simba,
things like that.
Kimba or Simba?
Simba.
One of the
Simba
two.
the White
so,
Lion,
So, okay, so you left school, you went to in 12:30, and then you were at 13:40. And where did you go from that point?
I kind of was out of broadcasting for a little while. I became an audio engineer in the Empire Room at Southampton Princess.
Okay.
Met my hubby, Albert, there, and learned how to be an audio engineer, working with Greg Thompson's Follies for the most part.
Well, what we'll
and
do-
then every other international act that came in.
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to take a short break right now.
Okay.
And when we come back, I want you to expand on the
Sure.
audio engineering part of your
Sure.
career.
Absolutely.
You're watching Airwaves with Al Seymour, CITV Program Director, and Shelley Thunder. We'll be right back. Importing animals into Bermuda. All animals arriving in Bermuda must be accompanied by the following: a copy of the import permit issued in advance by the Bermuda Department of Environmental and Natural Resources, the original health certificate issued within the 10 days prior to the animal's arrival, which includes the identity, contact information, and signature of the issuing veterinarian, a properly endorsed CITES document for an animal of an endangered species. Animals arriving without the proper documentation are immediately returned to the point of origin. Visit your veterinarian to obtain a health certificate and veterinary statements within 10 days of your animal's arrival. If the animal is coming from the United Kingdom, visit the local veterinary inspector within 5 days of your departure for an export permit. The application forms can be found on gov.bm. If you're applying for an import permit for dogs and cats, forward the application form and veterinary documents to this office via email at animals@gov.bm or fax it at 441-232-0046. Please ensure that your email address or fax number is shown on the application form. We will usually respond within 1 business day. Import permits will be valid for 10 days marked from the date of the veterinary certificate. For more information, visit the Ministry of Environmental and Natural Resources at gov.bm. Welcome back to Airwaves. If you've just joined us, we're speaking with, let's see, partly cloudy, no, mostly cloudy with some thunder. Shelly J. We're speaking to her on Airwaves. Before the break, you said you went into audio engineering from radio, which is sort of in the same arena. Tell me about that. Tell me what made you change and how did it happen?
Well, I had left ZBM, I believe, a few years, and I was working for a little AV company in town. Fred Jensen was his name, and he rented out video players. He had a few little AV events he would put on, horse racing in the hotels, and fashion shows.
Jensen's Mobile Movies.
There you go. That was one of them.
All.
That was one of them.
Okay, yes, I remember.
And so, it was sort of, and I had to do things like resplice the 60mm films for the horse racing, record the audio tracks for he did a fashion show with Calypso that would be put on for the ladies in the hotels and stuff. So anyway, little things like that. And he had quite a few, quite sort of analog AV equipment things that I got familiar with. He would rent out video machines at that time and stuff too.
That's right, the big clunk, the piano key
ones. Absolutely right. Yeah. So from there, I got wind of there was a fashion show that was going to be put on in the Empire Room, and I'm not busy. I'll put together some music for you, and. So we're up in the Empire Room and practicing for this fashion show. And I'm literally just push and play to play the music for the models to walk with, and talking with the promoter about what music he wanted. And I met the guys who were the crew up there that had worked up there for years. Wallace Rayner passed away recently, actually, was the head technician up there. And he said they had an opening where with the Follies coming in. It was the first time the Follies had moved from Hamilton Princess up to Southampton Princess, and I actually got hired to be the spotlight operator initially.
That's a big deal. I remember, that Empire Room, that was, this is what, still like mid-80s?
Oh, we're mid-80s now, mid-80s now.
Follies, And then Gene Steed had his show at the same time.
Well, we had an opening act. We had a local opening act every night.
Right.
Well, 6 nights a week. So I got to know who all the opening acts were. That's where I met my hubby Albert, who was the audio engineer at the time, and we each had to understudy another part because we had to do 6 nights a week, show must go on type thing, right? And so I understudied audio, and that's where I got into being an audio. It was a great way to learn because we didn't have a live band. All the music was on reel to reel. So I really learned from the get-go how to mix voices well with vocal effects, to have them, over a track. So the skill of that I learned early on, and so that served me really well when it came to learning all the other aspects of being an audio engineer. The microphones,
the thing
mixing boards, all of that.
You must have been, because it's live.
Sure.
I mean, literally, you're not recording, particularly with the shows like
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
So you really, the margin for error is zero.
Oftentimes, we would take notes. So it would be a postmortem of every show, and you would know if you messed up. It's like if I was late for a spotlight cue, the audience doesn't really know unless it's a heinous malfunction, right? So we would often rib each other about that. But you were right. We did have to learn, to be on point.
It's a curve
for those shows,
Yeah.
and they would run for like 6 to 7 months out of the year. So same show, 6 nights a week.
Wow.
You better have it down at some point. You
Well, at
know?
least maybe halfway through, you're like, okay, you can do it with my eyes closed.
Sure, you could sort of be quite confident, and you learned when you could and couldn't do things. Audio-wise was always a whole lot more pressure on Albert, and consequently, if I was taking his plays.
Sure.
Because timing in music is everything. If the guy's ready to sing and you miss that cue, it's a little more obvious.
It's so funny, you see it every now and then, a performance, and let's say you're going to some recital,
Sure.
and the person's standing there, particularly if it's like a child getting ready to sing, and the music isn't ready, and
Sure.
you're like, everybody's cringing, like, come on, guys.
Sure. Yeah, thankfully, we were dealing with, quite a production that had a lot of lighting and sound rehearsals and design, so we got to really get the hang of it before opening night, and then of course it got easier and easier as
So there
It
must have
went
been
on.
a transition when you went to, say, for example, computer controlled things as opposed
Sure.
to.
Sure,
And that
sure.
must have, did that, I mean, when did,
Not so much. I mean, of course, at ZBM when I worked there, it was all analog stuff
Yeah.
and single tape cart machines and things like that. It was still like it was still a mixing console that you
Yeah.
learned to run. So even with digital consoles now, it's still a console with channels. So
Yes.
that's not too steep of a learning curve. But everything that is involved in computerized audio reproduction now is just constantly changing and upgrading, and the things that a mixing board can do now are really take the place of half the equipment that you would have been
Right.
used to back in the day.
it's similar here.
Yeah.
You know, when we moved to high def, you know, what took 10 cables now takes one Cat 5.
Takes one Cat 5 cable,
Cat 5.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm impressed. I didn't know, I mean, I knew you were, you know, the broadcast part, but I didn't know this part here. And
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah,
it's kind of a separate discipline.
It kind of is, and I don't know why. I just really had a knack for it, and like you said, a passion for it. I learned how to make every kind of cable possible.
That's right,
I
because
had
you-
my own tool bag, my own soldering iron. You know, give me the
Soldering.
schematic and give me the parts.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a plug that I couldn't make. I could.
Yeah, you
Cat
would
5
say-
now, forget it. You
mentioned
know,
to like
you know?
a younger technician, say, soldering. Like,
Soldering.
What's soldering?
Like now everything's a clamp, right? You know, but
just twist on, and
yeah,
or
that-
literally just throw the thing away. And
yeah,
get
buy another one. It's, So,
Yeah.
but I still, you know, I don't have the eyesight now to do it as well as I did. But Albert and I wired the whole of Bermuda Sound Recording Studio at Happy Valley.
Yeah.
When it was in its inception.
Yeah, I
Yeah, so-
remember. Well, I did some recording there.
Sure.
With my Uncle Stan, actually.
Right.
Yeah, we did a kite song up there.
Did you? Wow.
And I remember at the end of the song, I said, "You're gonna do it Diddley Bop style." He said, "Okay, which one you want? You want Sesame Street or Richard Pryor?" I said, "No, no." I said,
better
"You-
do Sesame
I said, "You better do Sesame Street."
But yeah, things like that were really in my wheelhouse, and I really enjoyed it. And you know, the knowledge still serves me well today. Like I can talk about audio control with the best of them, and what I listen for, and
Sure.
what I think. Doing live audio is like my second favorite thing too.
So you would. This is
broadcast.
funny. You know, we
Yeah.
would listen to a live performance.
Sure.
And I'll be listening. You know.
Yeah.
But you be listening, and it's like a pilot sitting in a seat in the plane. He's hearing all these
Sure,
things.
sure.
So you know what, like, okay, he needs a little more bass here. What's this?
For
He
real,
needs a little
yeah, it's-
compression here, or
It's
or-
great to go to any show, and I would have no problem walking up to the engineer and asking questions and stuff like that. And if something really is like, wow, I wonder how he did that, I need to go find out what he's doing. Other times it's like, you know, you can tell it's tough without being critical. You know,
Right.
some people, you know, just start listening.
yeah. Well,
You
I
know,
mean, like,
that's the caveat. You know that you
Yeah.
have to sort of really pay attention to, because you know it is about looking at each musician and making sure you can hear them.
yeah, that's an art.
You know?
it's an art. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I look at movies, and sometimes it takes a really good film for me to stop looking at the film itself
Sure.
and just enjoy the story.
Yeah, often going to a show, I'm looking
Yeah.
behind me
Yeah.
to see where the video source is coming from.
Well,
I wonder what they're using up there, and blah blah blah. You know that comes up a lot.
yeah, it's an old saying, even in video, television, and film, good editing is invisible,
Sure.
and good audio production, you can't hear it
For real.
because you're so you
Yes.
hear what you're supposed to hear.
Yeah. Lots
Yeah.
of times, you know, even watching things on TV, Albert and I will be sitting there and going, you know, I can't hear that guitar. Look how hard he's working.
Yeah.
And I can't hear him. But oftentimes, too, what they're listening to in the room and what is being broadcast is two different mixes, because, of course, as you know,
Yeah.
when you've recorded things, you know, and a room has, you know, certain anomalies acoustically.
Yeah.
It can be challenging.
I got a question for you. I got a question. What do you prefer in your experience, analog when it comes to audio recording? Do you prefer analog or digital? I'm talking about what you hear.
I don't do a lot of recording engineering, so you know I'm not a studio engineer at all. So,
Oh,
but
okay.
speaking as far as what we spoke of earlier,
Yeah.
how it's so smart now, right? That is very helpful in a studio setting, because of course it's just stop,
And go.
start again. There's no stop the tape, roll it back, cut it with a,
Yeah,
there's
'cause
none of that goes on, right?
You mentioned
What
tape.
used to go on, yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned tape. You're like,
So-
splicing block might have.
That used to go on, yeah.
Yeah.
That used to go on. I still have a splicing bar somewhere at home that
Yeah.
I kept from when
I
we
don't
had to
think
do that.
when they built CITV, we were
Sure.
in the digital. We weren't in the
Yeah.
HD set, but it was literally all digital. Well,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
actually, no, we did shoot on tape at 1st. And so I guess in some of the people were still recording on tape.
Yeah, but back to your
And
question,
yeah.
if I'm doing a live audio event, even still now, I prefer an analog board because driving a digital board requires many more steps. Like if I'm going to use this prop right here, right now, I'd say, oh, that's sounding a little bright. Let me just go turn the treble down a bit.
Yeah.
On a digital board, it's like page, EQ, select channel, and then, right,
Yeah.
then you can get to where you want to make your adjustments.
Yeah.
So in a studio setting, that's wonderful. Because of course, as things develop, you can
Yes.
say, "Oh, the room's warming up a bit. I need to, dip a
Right.
curve, or I need to peak a curve, depending on the frequencies
See,
that
that's-
are giving
that's-
you difficulty."
That's
right?
what I appreciate. I actually appreciate because there's things are like I just go and listen to it, and
Sure.
but it's like if I'm watching Tell Drunk, say, wait a minute, come on, guys, this
Yeah.
needs to be this. But I know
sure.
exactly what you mean.
For
yeah.
sure. You notice audio mess ups, I think, a whole lot more, unless something obvious in video happens, like
Yeah.
a light blows up or
Yeah.
a piece of equipment falls down. You go often see that happen
Uh-oh.
in video, and you're like, uh-oh. But yeah, you notice when audio messes up on
Yeah.
things, and gosh, the whole lip syncing scandals in music and stuff like that have come about.
Yeah, people
because
talking
the
out of
audio
sync like
messed
this.
up, right? So there you go.
I've got an audio recording story to tell you.
Sure.
Remember Steve Easton,
Yes.
Just Platinum,
Yes.
and this is a true story. He was in his studio, and he got a call. He thought it was a joke. He almost hung up. It was a secretary calling for George Lucas.
Sure.
And he said, it's George Lucas. He said, no, he was in New York. And they wanted to record a few lines for the last Star Wars movie they made.
Gotcha.
Where I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan or anyway.
Yeah, a little
but
bit, yeah.
where in the end where he becomes Darth Vader.
Sure.
And Padme died. Anyway, so he says they want to come to Bermuda to record these couple of lines. He still couldn't be, but anyway, Lucas and James Earl Jones got on a private jet, came here one Saturday. Where his studio used to be on Church. Got out, walked in there, and Steve said he couldn't believe it when George Lucas came down and James Earl Jones came in and sat down. And the line was, "Where's Padme? She was alive and I felt it." That was the line. That was the line, and that's already recorded. And because the booth was closed,
Sure.
and you could see in there. And James Earl Jones went, "No!" Right at the end, right? And that's all he had to record. They took the DAT tape. Remember digital
DAT
audio?
tape,
DAT
yeah,
tape,
yeah.
He put it on a DAT tape, a CD. He might as well almost put it on vinyl.
Sure.
Gave it to him. They got into plane and left.
Yeah.
He couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I was sitting down there, but actually I went and watched the movie, and I watched the credits go up. I said, here, let me see what the deal is. Additional audio recording, Just Platinum, Bermuda. I had tears in my eyes.
For sure.
Yeah, because Steve's gone, and he was such a quiet soul.
Sure.
He was so, he
He was the epitome of a studio engineer.
he really, he was
He knew
great.
Stuff.
He was great.
And I just want to give a shout out to Johnny Woolridge and Shondell, who are still maintaining.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we're going to take one last break.
Sure.
And we'll come back. We're talking to Shelly Thunder, Shelly J on AirWaves. We'll be right back.
The following is a message from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. What is probably the first written conservation legislation in the Western Hemisphere was the 1620 Act protecting sea turtles passed by the Bermuda Assembly, only 11 years after Bermuda's colonization. Today, Bermuda has comprehensive conservation laws that protect various species of flora and fauna, both endemic and introduced. All migrant and resident birds in Bermuda are protected under the Protection of the Birds Act 1975, except for domestic birds and those which are considered pest species: crows, sparrows, kiskadees, starlings, pharaoh pigeons, and pharaoh chickens. The cahau, or Bermuda petrel, the common term, the white-eyed vireo, otherwise known as the chick of the village, and the white-tailed tropic bird, otherwise known as the longtail. For more information on protected species in Bermuda, visit the Department of Environment and Natural Resources at environment.bm. You can also find us on Facebook or call 236-4201.
CITV Channel 2.
And welcome back to Airwaves, speaking with Shelley Thunder. It's been a real blast talking to you here.
Absolutely.
And in our last segment, we talked about your audio engineering, well, not engineering, but recording career and live production. And so what got you back into broadcasting? Because you're on the air today. So.
Well, yeah. Mike Bishop called me up in 2010. Said they needed a drive home show host.
What's a drive home show? We don't hear them anymore, right?
People don't listen to radio much in their cars anymore.
Jam.
But of course, no. Drive time is AAA advertising time for radio, as you know.
Yeah.
So there are morning people, morning hosts, and generally drive home show hosts on most stations. You know, that's the way to entertain the biggest audience.
So this would have been Mix 106?
Mix 106,
Okay,
absolutely.
because they came on shortly after Power 95.
Yes. I remember when Kenny started up VSB just with 1450, and then it went from there. Yeah. It went to, and he got his Bible station that he got, and then he opened the FM station
It's a
after
full
that.
block. I mean, we really, it's the one thing I do miss is listening to a personality when I'm driving anywhere, or just listening. Sometimes I would tune into you just to hear a voice.
Sure, people often say that. It makes
the
a
music,
difference.
right?
The reason you listen to terrestrial radio in a sort of small town setting, which we're in small island setting, is to have a connection to the community through who's hosting your programs. And that's what happens now. I mean, David Lopes is still well loved on Inspire. Miss Thang doing her thing on Power 95 in the morning, and of course the captain on Ocean 89. I fill in for those guys occasionally too. So
I do hear you, and I prefer that than just the music.
For sure. And I know that even when our FM stations were automated back in the day, they're always still hosted.
Yes.
Which makes a difference than just having a playlist
playing.
So,
you got to work with, I mentioned some names like Carol Marshall.
Sure. Carol, I think, had left for good, which is why they were looking for another engineer.
Okay.
And of course, there was Peter. Can't remember his
Peter Lewis.
last name. Yes,
Peter Lewis.
Peter was great. I don't know if Mike did much on the air. He was more like program director then, and in charge of production.
Mike, he'd fill in too.
Yeah, he would fill in, and just some great folk. A name we didn't mention before about Bermuda Broadcasting was Webster Tucker, who was stalwart and such a good jock. He was DJ. When he did his old soul and R&B stuff, you couldn't top him as far as knowledge of acts and stuff like that, because the many acts who came through here and consequently played in the Empire Room.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
See, Webster was part of, I forget the name of his group, but he was a singer.
He was a singer back in the day. If you look at Chained to the Rock, you'll see him in there.
He came from a very either like photographic and broadcast family. All his brothers worked. Lee Tucker, Rundle,
all of
himself, and they worked in photography, radio, and TV.
There you go, talented family. But it was Mike who called me up and said they want a drive home host on Mix 106, and I went in, and Alberta was still on then. Alberta Soares. Berta May Soares, and she was not wanting to continue. She was ready to be sort of retired, and she was filling in. And that's where I started in there, 3 to 7 on
Kenny had an interesting
on
crew there.
106, yeah.
You know, because he had the country music
on 1450.
on 1450.
Yes,
He had
yes.
the Christian station.
Yeah.
And Mix 106 was sort of, I don't think it was out there by itself, really. It sort of competed, I guess, with 89 a little
Sort
bit,
of,
maybe.
yeah, sort of a little bit
Yeah.
with 89, what they call hot adult contemporary
Yes,
and top
yes.
40 pop.
Yeah.
Was pretty much what they did.
Yeah. So you did that stint for how long?
Till 2015 when he closed the stations down.
Oh, you were there to the end?
Till the end, yeah, absolutely.
Yes. You know,
I loved sitting in that window. That was the best.
Oh,
one of the best parts.
Ray Latimer said he'd be
Yeah.
sitting there like in morning traffic,
Yep.
and the cars would come by and they'd be waving to him.
Kids would just go crazy. Of course, the captain was in the position of the morning man at that point at Defonce, and I think
That's right.
it was him
yes,
and
yes,
Mike
yeah,
that
yeah.
decided we should call Shelley. So I have them to thank for getting me back in the door, and I've sort of been doing it ever since. You know, I went back up to ZBM when Defonce closed, and I've stayed with them even though the Drive Home show was no longer hosted. I ended up being the relief.
Right. So, like for example, today,
Yes,
is there a drive? The drive,
there is today.
like
but
when you like the like what-
today, this day,
this
until the
day.
end of the month.
Today, this day.
It's still. I'm hopeful that the Drive Home shows will be hosted again soon
Yeah.
on a regular basis.
If there's anything, there should be like the drive-in show
Sure.
in the mornings
And the
and
Drive
the
Home
drive
show
home show.
should be hosted, absolutely. And
Yeah.
people do say when I am on, it's so nice to have someone talk back to us. And of course, kids love
We took
hearing their name on the radio. They want to have their birthday requests, or whether they're going to Pony Club or they're going to ballet or swim meet. You know, all of that is all about community outreach, and that's what I think terrestrial radio's primary role still is.
It's funny, we took it for granted. you
Sure,
know.
we did.
We took it for granted that, like, I leave here today and I got a serious choice. I got like
Sure.
2 or 3 choices. The news came on at 5.
Sure.
VSBs came on at
5:30.
5:15.
Yeah,
or
5:15. 5:15. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and so you had this dichotomy of all the
You could switch.
personalities.
If you had already heard the news, you could
Yeah.
switch and put music on. Yeah.
It was great. It was
Yeah.
great. I worked for Defonce when television operations when he first came on, and it was competition sort of came back. I actually did a summer stint with him back
okay.
in '83. I was on air.
Got you.
They
Okay.
threw me on air the first morning. And I think I forget the girl's name, Joanne. I think she wasn't there.
Yeah, fiery baptism.
Yeah, the 45s and
Yeah.
the disc. Yeah,
so,
it was all. Yeah,
so I love being back in broadcasting, but I've still maintained my AV and my audio engineering stuff, and I
Okay.
look forward to every live event that I can do. And thankfully, there are still enough of those going around. There's a
Yeah.
couple, light and sound production companies on the island, and I've worked for everybody in every room, in
Right.
every genre of live performance that you can imagine, from working with the kids in senior drama in a couple of the schools here and teaching
That's
them.
what you asked. Yeah, do you go into the
I
schools?
do. I love doing it. It's been a little while, and I
Yeah.
haven't been asked in a little while, but I spent a few years doing the senior drama plays and productions with Soltis, with Work Academy. My grandkids went to Somerset Primary, so I was always the one who got called for the Christmas shows, and we would go put up a little PA for them and help the kids sing and
yeah.
learn about it. And whenever there's a kid that's interested in it, I am thrilled.
That's the
Because
thing,
it
you
often is the
try
thing
to
that
light 'em up.
Exactly, because the popular kids are up there on stage and doing the acting, and it's like none of them can do it without lights and a microphone. So you just remember how important you are, right? So
It's
that's
like the
yeah.
the good ladies behind all this.
Sure.
Us today,
Sure.
I tend to be more behind the scenes, but
Sure.
I felt that some years ago, when I spoke to Janelle, I said, "Look, I'm going to do this show because there's so many stories
Sure.
and things that will just fade into history if we
will.
don't tell them." you
Yeah.
know? And
And
you're
I
one part of the tapestry.
It's really important, I think, to create a legacy for those
Yeah.
coming up behind you.
Yeah.
And that's what I endeavor to do.
Yeah.
Daily. Any kid that's interested in shadowing me up at the station, I'm all for.
Sure.
Or even on the other jobs. We just, mic'd the whole stage for Wall Street the other night down at St.
wow.
George's, things like that.
Oh, you were involved in it with the Onion? No, you mean the Walkabout? Is
No,
that-
no.
oh.
Wall Street Band played for New Year's
Oh,
for
Wall
the
Street.
Onion Drop.
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
So,
okay.
I mean, that's a 12-piece band. to mic on stage. That's a lot of work, but that's where I still thrive. I enjoy that part of it. I'm going to make sure all the musicians on stage are happy with what they have.
Do you play an instrument?
I don't. I want to in my next life though, but I'm going to play flute now.
You're going to play
what? Flute.
Flute. You're going to be a
You know what?
flautist.
I'm going to be a flautist. I'm going to follow in Lizzo's footsteps because when it comes to doing a production, and I'm sure you know this too.
Yeah.
At the end of the night, the last two people there are the audio engineer and the drummer because he
And
has
the
the most
custodian.
stuff. He has the most stuff to pack up. The flautist is just whoop whoop whoop, take that low and go. Right. So I've always said that's what I would do if I did pick up an instrument.
So playing an instrument to me is like learning a language.
It is.
And you imagine you go to someone's house and they're having a party and they got a piano and everybody's sitting around. Oh, you could just get on it and start playing or pick up a guitar.
I envy it. I do envy it too. In the healthiest way. I envy it because when you see the magic that happens between sort of two musicians that are vibing, it's a magical thing.
And I love you talk about movie scores.
Real musicians playing real instruments.
I am such a stickler for real instruments and real, I don't know. It's just so important.
It is.
It's so
It
important.
is. Uh-huh.
Well, we're getting ready to wrap up, and like most of the interviews, we could probably go on and on and on. But I just want to say, it's been so nice having you.
My pleasure.
In the
Thank you.
studio, and I can just hope that you pass through this life, and you hope you can touch.
Sure.
So when you and I leave for a house, and you see some youngster, right, got this big thing, right, and you were maybe the catalyst or
I'd like
person
to
to
hope so.
get it started. Yeah, that's.
I have had a couple of my kids from the high schools hit me up. They've all been through university now, and some of them stayed in performing arts and come back here and asking me what they can do. And so, I try to give them the best advice I can about where to go to do what they love to do.
Yeah, Bermuda's a tough market in terms. It's small. It's small.
That's why your choices
And
are
so
limited.
Yeah,
to where
sometimes
you can work.
you will. It's tough. It's not easy. Even in this broadcast thing and stuff, things are changing. Everything's on your phone now.
Sure.
But there's something I heard an engineer say. Nothing beats live because live only happens once.
Exactly. It is of the moment, and then it is gone.
Yeah, and then it's gone. So you cannot pre-record live.
No, this is true. And oftentimes
when it comes to music, football, radio.
That's the advice that I give often. So if a musician is nervous or if a performer is nervous, I'm like, this is live and in the moment.
Yes.
And you just cherish it. And even if something, goes awry, the moment will be gone. There's no need to dwell on it, So
anything you want to say? We've been talking about young people. Anything specifically you want to say to young people right now that are interested in getting in the industry? Anything like that, or any advice, or?
Read books.
Read books?
Read books. Yeah, read books.
You mean there's things with the little peppery things?
It can be pages or it can be a tablet.
Yes.
But read and read out loud. The art of conversation is what being a good radio host is about. Yeah. And being able to do some research. I get asked a lot, how do you know what to say? I'm like, there's a big computer screen in front of me, and I have Wikipedia. And, this is how you know everything,
today.
right?
But
That's
back in the day, you might have had the newspaper here.
You know what you had? You had album notes on the
Album
back of
notes,
the LP, right? So...
I had a buddy of mine, he put a record on, and we were at WFSE working, and he would forget what he put on, and he's like, and you see him like trying to read the label while it was spinning around, right?
But no, I would advise any young person who thinks they might want to get involved in broadcasting or become a sort of technician in live performance to just give it all you got, give it your best, and be prepared to to put in long, hard hours. Lots of times
long hours?
unsociable, long, hard hours.
Get to see the sun come up?
But that if it's what you truly love, and I would reiterate the part that no performance can go on without lights and microphones. So it's an important thing to learn.
That's a really good place to end on.
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming
pleasure,
on this
my
set.
friend.
Ooh, she's got a thunderous handshake.
My pleasure, my friend.
Okay. So we've been talking with Shelly Johnson. And I want to thank you for watching AirWaves, the program that looks at broadcasting over the last 70 years. I'm Al Seymour, CITV Program Manager. Thanks for joining us.